Welcome to Under the Fig Tree podcast. In today's episode, hosts Reverend Micah Glenn and Reverend Dr. Ben Haupt talk theology and life as they meditate under the fig tree.
What's up? Welcome back to another episode of Under the Fig Tree podcast. I am your host, Reverend Micah Glenn, Director of Recruitment here at Concordia Seminary. As always, joined by my highly esteemed and incredibly dressed co-host, Reverend Dr. Benjamin Dre with an apostrophe, Haupt. How are you, bro?
Up? Nope. Still not my middle name. Oh, man.
I didn't know what you were going to do, but
yeah.
I'm glad you did that, though. Of all the things that, I'm like, all right, I'm going to stop and do it again. And you're like, no, we don't edit around here. You know, it always comes back to...
Oh, yeah.
To get you at one point in life.
You know, I'm cool. You just got to... The world's catching up to me. That's the what's going on.
When it's one of those words that can be ambiguous. When you said you're cool, at first you were like, oh, like I'm cool with it being in there. But what you meant was I'm cool. Yeah.
Myself.
That is the one word we used to describe it around campus.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Cool.
I mean, that was when in the 80s, like growing up, like you were, you wanted to be cool or rad. Hip wasn't a thing yet.
Not yet.
It was kind of old, right? Hip to be square. That was like a 60s thing.
I said not yet. Anyway.
Yeah.
Like I'm like that clued into the 80s. I was born in the 80s, but
rad. Oh, I did have a mullet at one point, and then I was really cool.
Really cool.
And rad.
So as I'm processing all of this, I'm also recognizing that you're from rural Indiana. So things probably
just say it. I'm from Fort Wayne, man.
What you thought was hip or what became hip where you lived probably was like a decade old.
Yeah, we did have IOU, Hypercolor, Skids. These were all important clothing brands in the late 80s, early 90s. But you were a baby at that point, so, you probably don't know about those things. See, I am cool. See,
right.
Just let us know.
That's all right.
If you don't know about Hypercolor, I mean, come on. You can't be cool if you don't know about Hypercolor.
Okay. We have a guest on the podcast. We have Dillon Weber.
Save us, Dillon.
I'm doing good. Thank you guys for having me on. I'm a longtime listener, so I'm thrilled to actually be a part of it.
Well, you not last year, but the year before, like after Under the Fig Tree was still kind of in its infant stages, you urged us on pre-vicarage. You're like, when are you guys coming back out with the podcast?
I know. I enjoyed listening, and you guys hadn't put out an episode for a while, so.
Well, and at that time was we had taken a break, but that was also when we were wanting to switch from just being audio to also having
this set.
a visual video recording of the podcast.
To have a tree that actually shakes in the wind or whatever it does.
The graphic, awesome. I like the introduction to this podcast. I love the set as well. And so, the set was being built. We were trying to figure out logistics and things like that. And so, we'll just say that your encouragement pushed that forward. So if you watch Under the Fig Tree on YouTube, thank Dillon.
Well, and a whole nother reason is we're going to dive into in a little bit. The student body president, you probably, I mean, it's your vast budget and the immense amount of power that you wield at the seminary. Probably it went all the way up to Dillon, and it was like, and then you gave it the thumbs up. Right?
I did. Yeah, that was exactly what happened.
We appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about Student Government Association.
Yeah, so I'm the Student Association president. It's I heard you in an earlier episode say Student Government Association, and that is kind of the function of what Student Association does. But it's not so much government as one might expect. Student Association is essentially the body of students on campus that we come together to kind of be a voice for the students on campus. So a lot of what we do is community building. I know Luke Fraunoff was on this show a few weeks ago.
Yep.
We do advocacy isn't the right word, but I have a bi-semester meeting with Dr. Egger. I'm in contact with some of the leadership of the seminary to talk to them about what is going on, how students are doing, that kind of stuff. We put on intramurals. We do a lot of different stuff. It's kind of a real grab bag of responsibility. So, and I have the easy job of, I really do. All of the other people that are a part of the student association have to actually facilitate that stuff. My job is just to support them in what they do. So I drew the long end of the stick. It was great.
Heavy lies the crown. That's what they say.
Yes.
And you were elected to this position, right? This isn't just they didn't pick straws or something.
Yeah,
as
we
you
didn't cast
suggested.
lots.
No casting lots.
I did run unopposed though. So, but that means I got more votes for yes than no. I don't want this guy to be our president.
Right.
So
Just knew.
yeah, technically elected.
There you go. Hey, that counts.
Yeah.
So so what's been the funnest thing that you have worked on as student association president?
Man, I enjoy. This is kind of a cop-out answer, but I enjoy having a part in all the different things going on. I get to work with one of my close friends doing intramurals, John Duker, as the intramural chair. He was a groomsman in my wedding. I love being able to go to the social events and help Luke out, pour beers at the Profenstein, help set up all the stuff for cookouts, things like that. I enjoy being able to grab a meal with Dr. Egger every once in a while to just chat about how things are going. I get to organize the student forums that we put together to help communicate between the students and the seminary leadership. I just like being able to have a inside look about that and pretend like I have some kind of effect in what's going on here on campus.
I love it. So you sit down with President Egger, you're like, Tom, let's just talk president, Tom. Like, just tell me everything that you've got going on. I'll share some insider stuff with you. It's that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That's good.
We spent a lot of time talking about just like campus ministry and our different experiences the last time we met. He was very candid with us. He doesn't really know our class very well because of a host of different situations.
Sure.
Our first year, we got sent home early because of COVID.
Right.
Second year, he was adjusting to being the president on a full-time basis for the first time. And then our third year, all of us are out on vicarage.
Right.
And so it's been a lot of just getting to know each other. I'm a really social person, and so I just love being able to talk to people and get to know people.
And President Egger cares deeply about community and what's going on campus. So no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, Dillon, we always like to ask our guests, especially first time on, you've made the decision to go through college, then you applied to seminary. Now you're in your fourth year. So I don't like, it's one of these things where it's like, obviously things could go wrong, but in all likelihood, come April, you'll receive your first call. So what was your path to becoming a seminarian and a soon-to-be pastor?
Yeah, I didn't have a very traditional path of getting here. Although, I'm 25, I'm the age that most of my classmates are that would have gone through the Concordia system and graduated and are here on time, if that's the right way to say it. But I didn't grow up Christian. I guess that's where to start. My parents were both Christian growing up, and then after confirmation, they kind of fell away from the faith. And so they married, they had me, and church was not a part of our lives. Although my mom did have me baptized when I was a baby, September 16th, 2000 in Rochester, Washington, because that's what you did. And I thank God for that every day because, looking back, it's very easy to see God being faithful to his promises through there.
Yeah.
But
2000.
Yeah.
I was in high school. He was in seminary.
I was starting seminary.
Yeah.
I was done with college.
Yeah. So yeah, the first 15 years of my life, I was not a church-going person. I'd say that I probably became Christian in middle school. I had a friend that encouraged me to read my Bible. A girl that I had a crush on, to be completely honest.
That'll do it.
And when she told me that, I was like, yeah, I should do that. And it worked. And I started to read the Bible, and I started to believe it. It's a very mundane conversion, but I think that God works through mundane tasks and actions every day. So yeah, by the time I got to high school, I would have considered myself Christian, but it wasn't until probably after at the end of my sophomore year of high school that I started going to a church. My best friend growing up invited me to his youth group, so I started to go there, and then I started to go on Sundays. I was going to that church for about 9 months before my friend stopped going to church, and I stopped going shortly after for various reasons, but because my friend was not going there anymore was a big reason.
Yeah.
And that left a big hole in my life, And in those 9 months, church became something that I looked forward to and actively pursued. And so for about 3 months, there was just kind of a gaping hole. I'd wake up on Sunday mornings and not remember what I did before. So soon after that, that same girl that actually told me to start reading my Bible invited me to go to her youth group at the LCMS church that I now call my home church. That was right before my senior year of high school. So I started going to that youth group, started going to church there on Sundays, and just never stopped. I started to get more involved. I started teaching confirmation. So I graduated from high school after about a full year at that LCMS congregation. And then I went to the University of Washington. Go Huskies. We're in the middle of a great football season right now as we're recording. We have a big game on Friday, which is going to very nervous for, but besides the point.
Did they get moved into top 4?
We're number 3 right now.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yep, and Oregon's number 5, so huge game on Friday.
Yeah.
Against our arch rival.
Notre Dame isn't, they just, another bad season.
Yeah.
We'll keep hoping.
A topic for another podcast,
Maybe next year.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so I went to the University of Washington. When I started there, I was going to be a nursing major. I wanted to become a nurse practitioner. That was my original goal. And I took about 1 quarter at the University of Washington to decide I didn't want to do that. I had a chemistry class that had a lab, and I was good at chemistry. I really was. I just hated the work. It was just...
And there were no cute girls to say, you should do this homework and keep you going.
No, not in that class. Yeah, so...
Lord has his ways.
At that point, I was still a chemistry major, but I knew that wasn't what I was going to do. So I started taking a few other classes and settled on education. I had always wanted to be a teacher, but my parents kind of pushed me in a direction that...
Made money.
For lack of a better term.
I hear it all the time from parents these days because they're worried that pastors aren't able to sustain, like church workers in general can't make a living, but we do, and it's possible. You just have to
right
have the right expectations.
When I told my dad that I was going to be a teacher, he was pretty upset with me, and he wasn't upset with me because I was letting him down, but he was nervous that I wasn't going to be able to provide for myself and for a future family.
Right.
But yeah, so during this entire time, I'm trying to figure out what I want to study, settle on education. This entire time, I'm getting more and more involved at my home congregation. I'm from Federal Way, Washington, which is about half an hour south of Seattle, where the University of Washington is. So for my first 6 months of college, I tried to find a church to go to regularly up there, and I couldn't really find anything, and it was just such a close commute to get back to my home congregation that I started going home on the weekends. So like I said, I was teaching confirmation, youth group leader, all those pretty generic kind of stuff for young adults to be involved in at a congregation. So I'm studying education, and for the education major at the University of Washington, there's a capstone, which is a year-long internship. I did mine my junior year, and that was teaching in an inner city middle school in Seattle. Oh. And it was one of the most rewarding and challenging experiences of my life. And it single-handedly turned me off to teaching in a formal setting. I loved the kids. I loved what I did. But there are just aspects of it that I knew that this was not what I wanted to do for a career. And, at the same time, I'm getting more involved in the church. And so I thought, maybe I'll go to school and get a master's degree in theology or something. Just kind of push off the decision of what to do. I had a couple friends from my congregation that were down at Concordia Irvine, and I knew that they had a Master's of Theology program. And then I found out that they had a Master's of Theology that paired with a DCE certification, I think is the right word. And so that was really intriguing to me. And while this is going on, I'm starting to fantasize about being a elder in a church and just being a strong lay member in a congregation. I just loved that idea. And it took until about July of 2019. This is in between my junior and senior year of college. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Didn't want to teach anymore. I was majoring in economics and education. Didn't really have a plan. I went to the National Youth Gathering in Minneapolis, and the first night that we had a mass event, I remember sitting there and just kind of realizing, man, there isn't anything else I really want to do for the rest of my life. Telling people about Jesus was something that became really near and dear to my heart, growing up in a family that wasn't Christian, going to a really secular university like the University of Washington. A lot of my friends, most of them were unchurched or just atheist, to say the least. Family wasn't Christian. So there was a lot of people in my life that needed to know who Jesus was, and that tug on my heart to... I realized that in all of these people's lives, I was the common thread. And if they don't know Jesus, it seems pretty obvious that was my role to be that person to tell them. So I figured, I don't know how to do that. I should probably figure out. And so when I got back from NYG, I applied to the seminary. And here I am. Yeah.
It's really a neat story. It's a story that we don't hear as often, right? I think the majority of our students come from Midwest, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, Texas isn't Midwest, I know, but there are a lot of Lutherans there. Indiana, Missouri for sure, Michigan. What was it like coming to the seminary as a student from the West Coast, having gone to a secular state school with almost no Christian friends? What was it like coming into the seminary? What kinds of things did you think, oh, my background kind of set me up perfectly for this? Mm-hmm. And what were the other parts where you said, oh, I don't know this lingo, or I don't know this Midwestern Lutheran culture that everybody's talking about?
Yeah. Man, there's a laundry list of things that I could reply to that with. First thing that jumped out in my mind is I remember taking my intro classes here. The first semester here, we take Intro to Systems, Intro to Systematic Theology, Intro to Pastoral Theology, Intro to Historical Theology, and Intro to Interpreting and Communicating the Word. they talk about things in a very specific way in those classes, and I had no training whatsoever other than my time on Sundays listening to my pastor preach. And I'm very thankful. I have a wonderful pastor back home who is a just very gifted preacher. And through that preaching, I was prepared relatively well given my background, but I was still noticeably behind the way that a lot of people already knew how to talk about things. That was a big struggle for me.
Sure.
But then in another aspect, for like our intro to pastoral theology class, there's a big emphasis on mission and interacting with non-Christians. At least there was when I took it. I can't imagine that that's changed. But I had the unique opportunity of going to a place that isn't LCMS everywhere. There's not Christians everywhere. Most of my friends were not Christian. That just gave me an understanding, an insight. Not to mention my own background. Like I know very much what it's like to not have that hope. So coming here and being able to see from a different perspective than most people here, I think, has given me advantage isn't the right way to say it, but it's a particular set of skills that not everyone has or can have. So, yeah, you said Midwest culture. I got married right before vicarage, and so this is my wife's first time living out here. We were driving through campus probably the first week after we got back, and I waved at someone, and the person waved back at me as we're driving, and then I waved at the next person, and they waved back at me. And Reagan said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" I said, "That's what you do. You wave at people as you pass them." And she said, "No, they're just doing that because you're waving at them first." And I said, "Okay, watch this." And so we continue to drive, and we pass someone, and they wave at me, and Reagan's like, "Ah, yeah, okay." Yeah, very different than the West Coast.
We call that sense. Midwest nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's a couple of things that as you're talking. So one, Dorothy's mom, my wife's mom, she grew up in Bremerton.
Okay. Oh wow.
A little before you did, but the culture out west, and then when you say west, you can't do north to south because Washington's different than Oregon. It's different, and all the way down, and just that Seattle culture. The place is just for people who have never been out there. It's just not. Again, it's part of the United States. There are Lutherans there. There are a lot of different people there, but there are just things that happen that if you grew up in the Midwest, in a city or not, that people are just on a different wavelength of thinking. And
let's put it this way: Fort Wayne's not producing no Kurt Cobain.
No, exactly. And I excuse my language, but my first trip downtown Seattle, we park in a garage. We're going down to like the whole like fish market, doing that whole Seattle thing, right? You're doing your thing. And on that day, there's an event called the Slut Walk. And we watched them go by. And I won't describe this march, but I was like, welcome to Seattle.
Yeah.
And so what I'm getting at is I can only imagine. So my dad was a Marine, different culture, moved to St. Louis, different culture, but like growing up in that culture, going from unchurched to church, and that struggle. As you began to like transition from kind of church to more church to college to being involved in your congregation to think about seminary, what were some of those? Was there ever a time where you were looking at where you grew up and starting to just look at it and think about it differently, or is it still just home and it is what it is?
Yeah, my perspective has changed greatly over the past 4 years here, from the time that I started going to church to now. I think that's just part of how humans grow over time. It's been almost 10 years, maybe more. Since I became Christian. Things definitely look different. At the same time, though, like you said, that still is home, and I think it always will be. We're hoping to end up back on the West Coast, if not the Northwest. But I think that we, especially at my time or throughout my time here, the seminary does a good job at forming people to be pastors, informing people to look at the world in a certain way. And in that sense, my perspective on the West Coast, on humans, on a lot of stuff has changed drastically. It's made me a lot more compassionate. It's made me a lot more understanding. I don't know. It's hard to articulate exactly how it's changed, but it certainly has, and it's for the better, because I'm able to relate to people in the sense that, hey, you and me are both from a big city on the West Coast. That's a unique experience, especially in the LCMS.
Right.
But yeah, does that answer your question? I don't know.
I do know what you're mean, because it's the same thing. I mean, I grew up in St. Louis, and I'm talking about, St. Louis. But if you come and you live in St. Louis and drive around for a little while, there's a lot of different parts of St. Louis. When I went home, I was just thinking about that, and then I'm going to ask you about your vicarage, because I don't remember where it was. But when I went home in my first call, and by home I was a domestic missionary in the part of St. Louis I grew up in, and I remember the first day looking around as a called and ordained servant of God's word, and thinking, when I was 17, standing on this spot where I worked used to be a gas station, filling up gas, and now it's the community center, and I looked at the people, I was just like, you can view it in a couple of different ways. Like, these people have just, squandered life so much and got themselves into this really hopeless, desperate situation, and they got to get themselves out of it. And that could be somewhat true for some of them, and yet they still need God's word, both law and gospel, and that's what I was called there to do. And it just gave me a different lens to see the place where I grew up, to appreciate the things that I experienced growing up, to wrap my mind around the context in which I was becoming a young adult. And it just helped in the ministry process of growing up there, going through the formation process, and then going back, even to now, like, and we now live in Clayton, a radically different part of St. Louis, but all of that life experience and that kind of differentness than what's typical. Ben's very typical. I'm just messing with you, bro. But you get what I'm saying, right?
I mean, my last name's Haupt.
To be like one of those outliers is it's you're not better than anybody else. It just gives you, like, when you said I have a particular set of skills, all I could think of was a movie Taken. But it just gives you a different perspective that not everybody has, and I think that's incredible, because I first met you your first year. I think we had coffee one day, and I remember listening to some concerns you had on that day, and I was like, man, this kid thinks differently. You thought differently than I did, especially in my first year, and I was like, I can't wait to see what 4 years of seminary. Not to say like, oh, he needs to be formed. We all do it our first year, but I was like, I can't wait to see what this grows into. And here you are, and I just think it's remarkable.
Sure. I should say I remember that conversation. I really appreciate even to today. It's one of the nice things about the seminary is that I can go and grab a cup of coffee with someone and voice concerns and not feel bad or nervous about anything. But yeah, one of the nice things about growing up in Seattle and being able to go back there is I can see how it changes over time too. And yeah, you mentioned that you could look at things through a certain lens and say that someone squandered life away. And maybe that's true in a certain light. But the more you are in God's word, the more that you're here studying, the more you realize the depths of sin and the effects that it has on the world. And, I know that firsthand. I had a brother who died of a fentanyl overdose. And so, a lot of people would look at that and just, say those same things, squander life away, whatever, insert whatever criticism you want. But when you are able to take a step back and, see it personally and see it through the lens of, God's good grace, you recognize that, we are broken people, and that brokenness affects all sorts of different people in very drastic and different ways. And so I'm very thankful that the seminary's fostered that kind of mindset in me.
Wow. To have gone through that kind of personal tragedy and to remain in the faith is a really big deal, because for a lot of people, personal tragedy, especially losing a sibling in a circumstance like that, can shake to the foundations of a person. But you're a fantastic theologian. I've had you in a couple of classes, and you've written some fantastic sermons, and you think about congregational work and mission work and reaching out to people that have been through their own challenges in really, really unique ways. It's amazing what God does with us, even in the midst of some of the most brutal times of life.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to ask a little bit more about coming from this West Coast perspective, because in some ways, I think my hunch, and I'm not trying to be like doomsday or prophet, but I think what I've experienced is that my friends in Germany, and what it's like living in Germany, and very much post-Christian. Christians are like 1 or 2%, 3 or 4 maybe. East and West Coast are now very similar to where Germany is today. My hunch is that the Midwest is in this Western culture. The Midwest is even moving in that direction, because the East and West Coast used to be filled with faith, and they're filled with institutions that were built by Christians. So for even for people in the Midwest that grew up in Bible Belt, Lutherans everywhere, what is it like to grow up in a place that there are just not very many Christians? And I don't know, I guess it's kind of what we've been talking about, but any further ideas on how that's shaped you or how it's made you think about the world?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that could be said. I remember having a lot of very deep and thoughtful conversations with my friends from a very young age. People on the West Coast are not just, robotically going through life. They deal with the same kind of struggles and pains as anyone on this planet. And we ask questions too. And I can remember a lot of my conversations, contemplating God and, why things like that happen. The difference is that with many of those conversations between two non-Christians, there's no hope to be had in there. Lots of trying to figure things out, which, I can step back and look at it from a perspective now where I can say, like, oh, well, these two non-Christians trying to figure something out, when you're left to your own devices, you're just going to mess things up all the more. I know that firsthand. But in the moment, it's tough to do that. Yeah. Can you repeat your question just to keep me on track a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's partly just this observation that what's happening on the coasts probably is coming for the Midwest too. Mm-hmm. So maybe the question is best put this way: what would you say to Midwestern Christians who are thinking, I'm starting to see some of this. I'm starting to see my friends and siblings and cousins, family members walking away from the church. And I think for people in the Midwest, it feels very much like the foundations are shaking.
Okay.
But you're a Christian with a solid Christian faith, and you didn't have all this Christian infrastructure around you. So what would you say to people who are living in the Midwest who are worried that the Midwest is going to become like the West Coast?
Yeah. It's a fair question. The first thing that came to my mind would just say, remember that God is faithful to his promises. I'm living proof of that, even for 13 years, it looks like God is not speaking. God is not there. God is not present. But God is always faithful to his promises. It's very easy to say that we need to combat something that's happening. I think it's a more helpful mindset to have is to just continue to stay faithful, continue to be the church, and God will work through that rather than trying to do everything we can every step along the way. When we do that, things tend to go wrong. I think all of us know that personally. When we try to take control of things, we mess them up. Yeah. It's easy to look at the world and see that and perceive that God is not doing something, that God is not answering his people's prayers, but he is. And it's trite, but God does make all things work together. I think practicing gratitude and thanksgiving will really help foster that kind of mindset. That was something that really helped me, especially in college. I took a class called Wellness and Resilience in College and Beyond. I would always joke that it was essentially a how not to be depressed class, which is much needed, to be honest, especially at a big state school in the Northwest where a lot of students are experiencing 70% of the days without sun for the first time.
Right. Lots of rain.
Yeah, but one of the things that we had to do, we had to write a 4-page paper every single week. That doesn't sound like that much now to me, but at the time, it was just the worst. But one thing that we had to do was spend half a page talking about what we were thankful for. And this is coming from a secular professor, secular everything. But it really did help me start to see where God was working and where God was faithful in my life, even in the most mundane circumstances. It's so easy to get caught up on the bad things that happen, and rightfully so. But the more that we can look for where God is working, the more that we'll see where he is. And I think that has been one of the biggest encouragements to me.
I love that. The gratitude is all over the Psalms. And I actually, this feels like one of those moments where it's like, whoa, God's kind of bombarding me with the same message over and over. Maybe it means that I need to be a little bit more thankful in my life. But I was just heard this the other day, and so I've been thinking about how much gratitude shows up in the scriptures, but especially the Psalms. And the Israelite people, God's people, he wanted them to be thankful. That's extraordinary advice.
Yeah. Shameless plug, Dorothy, she's for a class project, she created this gratitude journal. She had a class project, and Dr. Schmidt encouraged her. He's like, this is good. You should do it more. And it's one of those trickle-down things where she did it for class, then she took it seriously, and she published it. And now she continues to create these different liturgical season, but just regular season gratitude journals. And as she's talking to me, it's made me stop and think about it.
Did she make you buy a journal?
I would. So here's the thing, and this is I love her creativity, and I love what she's doing, and I 100% support it. I can't keep a paper journal. I've tried a million times. And
I should have asked it the other way around. I should have asked, did you buy one of your wife's journals?
No. I mean, listen, it supports like her online numbers, but it doesn't support me. Like I lose money twice that way. Anyway.
We're going to have to edit that part out. Yeah. Sorry, Dorothy. Shout out to your business. You're doing great work.
On the theme of being grateful, I did like her Instagram and her Facebook pages.
Nice.
Exactly. But it's just one of those things where like you start looking for these different things, and I'm big into counseling and psychology. Not that I know anything about them, but I go and I encourage people. Just because it's just like the 2 pages of what are you thankful for? I mean, me and my counselor, we always do this. priority listing just so I can keep things in front of me because I have ADHD and it's very easy for me to be distracted. And because of all this other stuff, I came across this thing about like helping you remap and rewire your brain. And one of the things I came across was just starting your day with 20 deep breaths, brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand.
I don't know that I've ever done that in my entire life.
It makes me uncomfortable.
And it was at first. It felt so odd, but now it's starting to feel normal. And this was the one that took me the longest thing to do. As I'm brushing my teeth, is looking in the mirror and saying I love you, not in like a egotistical way, but just a self appraisal and self gratitude way. Like, here I am, this creature of God who has been wonderfully blessed. And by saying I love you, what I'm saying when I look in the mirror is like, I love what God has done for me in my life. And how often do we actually do that? Mm-hmm. And if you can't stop and have gratitude for what God has given you each and every day, and not just like the material things, but just who you are, Dillon, and what he's brought you through and the thing that he's blessing you for. If you can't be grateful and love that, well, how can you love anything else? It's, I think, the guy's ultimate thing. It was a YouTube short, so I didn't get to see the rest of his speech. I just started doing the thing. The I love you part was the last thing I added to the routine. But I had to stop and, like, what was stopping me from just saying I love you to myself? Because it's self-centered, it's selfish. But I don't think it's anything like that. But it helps you see other people differently and all these little things. I think that's wonderful. Those are the types of things when you were talking about being grateful, that paper that I was picking up from you. And like, now that you said that and having known you now for a few years, it just makes so much more not that like you didn't make sense, but like I think about who you are, and it's just remarkable to me. I'm grateful that God brought you here.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. That's an encouragement to me. Thank you.
You had asked earlier about Dillon's vicarage, which is a good question. Mm-hmm. So tell us about vicarage. Where was it, and what was it like?
Sure. I vicared at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Everett, Washington, which is about half an hour north of Seattle, which is about an hour north of where I'm from. So I got to go back home for vicarage, and my wife and I were extremely thankful for that. We kind of pigeonholed the seminary into placing us there because Reagan was finishing her last year at Pacific Lutheran University, which is in Tacoma, Washington. And this might be hard to believe, but there's not many LCMS vicarages available in the Northwest. And so the next closest vicar to me was in Gresham, Oregon. That was a Fort Wayne vicar. And then the next closest from St. Louis was in Southern California or Bismarck, North Dakota. Wow. So I was alone out there, but we were very thankful for it because it allowed Reagan to finish school while I was still on track to graduate when we desired to. I had a great vicarage. It wasn't the congregation that going in I would have ever seen myself at, but it was one of the most formative years of my life. I feel like I say that every year looking back, but it really was. I had a wonderful supervisor by the name of Kyle Heck, who recently retired. I left at the beginning of August, and he retired at the end of August. So
you left, and he just couldn't go on.
I wore him out.
Went out on a high note.
But yeah, I got to preach a lot. I think I might have preached more than he did over vicarage, which I loved. I got to teach adult Bible study every other week. I got to teach confirmation. There's a lot of different things I got to do a lot of, and I was very, very, very thankful for that. Not to mention I was close to family, which was a huge benefit for our first year of marriage, to be there with family and my friends, especially my friends at the University of Washington that are still there, many of which are not Christian. And so not to go back to the last question a little bit, but there is one more thing I thought of. To prepare St. Louis and the Midwest for what's coming, give people the benefit of the doubt. One of the things that I realized over vicarage, something that I kind of knew but was really internalized to me, was that a lot of people are not anti-Christian. a lot of people just don't know.
Right.
I was going to a Mariner game with one of my friends from college, and they were telling me, it was around Easter time, or maybe it wasn't a Mariner game. I don't know what we were doing, but we were together, we were talking, and they said, "Oh, it's Easter is soon, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And they asked me, "What is that?" That is something that I, as someone that grew up not Christian, very much took for granted.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't hate Christians; they just don't know.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do.
Sure,
There is
sure.
an antagonistic bend to a lot of people, but the majority of them just don't know. And if you can look for the good, if you can give people the benefit of the doubt, you will make it so much farther interacting with those people. But to get back to the vicarage conversation, that was probably one of the biggest things I learned on vicarage. I had a wonderful vicarage. I absolutely loved it.
So what was the size of the congregation, and what were some of the things besides the kind of the expected or usual? I don't want to in any way suggest that like preaching, teaching, confirmation aren't exciting, because they are, and that's the bread and butter of vicarage. But was there anything that you did that was part of your vicarage experience? So size of the congregation, then anything unique, especially in regards to it being in the Northwest?
Yeah, we so the size of the congregation, we worshipped about 130 every weekend, at one service, one Bible study on Sundays, and that was all that we would do, which was great. I really appreciated having one service, not because of the workload, although that was a benefit, but because it made all of the members of the church worship together. And I think that that's such a huge thing to foster if you're able to do it. The people of the congregation knew each other and they loved each other, and that was such an encouragement to see from my perspective. What was the other? Something unique
Anything
about
that made your vicarage unique, or any kind of evangelism stuff that you did? We
didn't do too much evangelism, which was a disappointment for me, to be honest, especially being in downtown Everett. We lived in probably 3 blocks from actual, like, true downtown Everett, and so there is a lot of very stereotypical issues that you would see in big cities on the West Coast. Lots of homelessness, lots of drug use. But one of the unique things that I got to do was just be a part of that and see it. And talk to people about it. I would go on walks with, but Reagan would go down to Tacoma and stay with her parents a couple nights a week just to mitigate it'd be like a 2.5 hour drive each way, because it's north end of Seattle Metro to south end of Seattle Metro. So I would go on walks often in the afternoons when Reagan was not there. And I got to talk to a lot of people, a lot of homeless people, a lot of people that lived in the area, temporary housing, things like that. And to listen to them and their stories was wonderful. That I can't begin to describe the benefits of that, to just be able to sit there and listen. Whether they knew I was even going to be a pastor or not was besides the point, but a lot of those people just want someone to listen to, and so I was able to provide that in a few cases, which was very important to me. I was trained as a Stephen minister there on Vicarage, which was great. Nice. That's a big part of the congregation. They have a very active Stephen ministry program, which I think is what helps that congregation be so close to one another. Sure. I can't recommend it enough. I hope that whatever congregation calls me, Lord willing, has that program. And if not, it'll be a very easy thing for me to want to start there.
Absolutely.
And it was Reagan was also commissioned or trained as a Stephen leader and Stephen minister. And that was probably the most unique in terms of like intentional ministry thing that we were able to do.
I love that. My folks did the Stephen ministry thing for a while, and then they became Stephen leaders, where they trained the actual people who are doing Stephen ministry, and they have just they have loved that. They've been it's been a wonderful program. It's a great way to get laity involved in a significant ministry in the church without just saying, hey, here's a need, good luck. If you need any assistance, read your Bible. It's a pretty thorough training process.
It is. Yeah, and I'll share a small story about one of the experiences I had through Stephen Ministry. We'd have every 2 weeks we'd have a meeting where all the Stephen ministers would gather together and just give a report on their care receiver and do casuistry type stuff. There was a woman who put an ad in the newspaper or online or something for, she was a long-term resident of the hospital nearby. She put an ad in for someone, she would pay someone to just come and talk to her. And that was heartbreaking for us to hear. But it also, seeing that, allowed us to go and send someone there and at least chat with that person one time. I don't know if it ever stuck. It was close to that might end there. But I think that's a good microcosm for what's going on, not just on the West Coast even, but just everywhere. People are lonely enough to pay someone to come and just listen to them. We as Christians have such an opportunity to fill that need and then give them what they don't even know that they need.
So good. It makes me think of it makes me think of The Chosen. Have you watched any of The Chosen?
I've seen the first season.
So there's this great episode where Jesus sits with the woman at the well. They do the woman at the well scene, and them being in Samaria and Jesus mixing with and interacting with people that you wouldn't necessarily expect, certainly wouldn't have expected Jews to spend time with. And what you said about giving people the benefit of the doubt, the thing that I always think about with the woman at the well is Jesus doesn't start out by saying, You've had 5 husbands, and the man that you're with now, he's not your husband, is he? Yeah. He doesn't start out in this like hostile, like roll your sleeves up. Let's theologically fight. Mm-hmm. He gives her the benefit of the doubt. He says, would you be willing to give me a drink? I mean, wow. Yeah. So the other thing that just all what you've been saying reminds me of is. As you're going to the West Coast and living in this place where Christians are in the vast minority, it's very similar to the earliest Christians who, many of them specifically traveled to, the apostles and the earliest Christians traveled to big cities where they must have been like way less than 1%, right? Mm-hmm. 5-10 people in a city of tens of thousands that were very much not living the Christian life and living out the Christian faith. But that's what early Christians did, and they found their way. So
absolutely. Yeah, I'm taking an independent study with you right now on church revitalization, and one of the books that you had me read was called Wisdom from Babylon. Yeah, and it is a great resource in terms of just shaping the mindset of how do we go about this changing dynamic, the secularization of the world. As you mentioned, the West and East Coast are very much closer to secular Europe than St. Louis is right now. But the early church, but this is one of the points that is brought up in the book, is that we can learn a lot from the early church. Not even just Paul and Acts. We can learn a lot from the first 300 years of the church, and there is a lot of things to learn. There's a lot of resources to be combed over, and that'll be a great benefit for us going forward.
You get an A. I didn't make you say that, but I also would say first shout out to Gordon Smith. I can't imagine that he's a regular listener of the podcast, but I might actually send him this episode and say, hey, Here's how your book is being used. But to our regular viewers and listeners, Wisdom from Babylon is a really good book, and I would highly recommend it to literally anybody who's interested in living out the Christian faith in our secular age.
Yep.
Good shout out. Do you have any other big burning questions?
Not that I can. I mean, there were things that I'd love to dive into, but not towards the end of the podcast. I'm talking about rabbit holes of experience, deeper into like specific conversations. Because a lot of what you were talking about with your ministry, with walking alongside homeless people, I had a lot of that type of experience when I was in Ferguson. And at some point, I think a lot of people are afraid of that type of thing. And there are a lot of reasons to be afraid of it. But like you said, if you give people the benefit of the doubt, not only will you find that they're people, that they're struggling with things, sometimes they're struggling with things that you're struggling with, but it's your story of this woman who's paying people to have conversations with her. Breaks my heart that we live in a world where that's a service. I'm glad that she has access to that, but like you said, while we're watching the world become less Christian, the world around us, the thing that I always kind of held on to was it just signals that the world is in that much more need of the gospel, of God's word, that there's this vacuum that somehow we're not meeting the mission of the church that we're called to. Not that everybody in America is ever going to be Christian, but just that reality. Maybe a conversation before you head out on your first call, but I would love to dive that deeper into that. But it's just one of those things that we're rattling it off. And it's, again, we're talking about the West Coast and we're talking about Ferguson here in St. Louis. And with something else that I found is that I was going around talking to people about Ferguson. They were like, a lot of the things that you are talking about that led to Ferguson, that are happening in Ferguson, are happening in rural Nebraska. And it's, imagine that the brokenness isn't limited to the polis, that it extends to a lot of different regions. And I think if we all kind of began to think that way and act accordingly, we would be remarkably grateful for how God responds and fulfills the promises that he's given to us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, that's so good. Well, we do have some burning questions. It's called Ripe for the Picking or Leave It on the Tree.
I've been looking forward to this day for ages.
Oh, you said that. I should have picked better ones. Well,
I know. I was just looking at mine and thinking, oh, man, these are kind of lame. All right. I'm not sure that this is super exciting, but it'll be my warm-up. So, ripe for the picking or leave it on the tree, bubbly water.
Bubbly water. That's ripe for the picking. I love it. We got a soda stream on our registry.
Ooh.
And Reagan does not like it when I just use it to make seltzer water, but I do it all the time.
Yeah.
And I drink it, and it's the best. I love it.
We have been talking about getting one of these for a while in our house because we drink so much bubbly water, like literally cases a week.
Yeah.
But we've not bought a soda stream, so
okay, yeah.
But soda stream, that's good. It's ripe for the picking for me too.
Yeah, it's. I don't know that I seek it out. I'll say this: in the year I studied at Westfield House, when I'd go to a restaurant and we'd ask for water, and they say,
"Oh yeah, Europeans love this
bubbly
stuff.
Or still." I'm like, why is this an option? It's fine, but I say all that at lunch today. I grabbed one. But before I drank the one I was going to drink, I saw one in the fridge. I was like, oh, that flavor looks nice. And it was a hard seltzer. I'm glad I did not drink it. Listen, I am a lightweight. And had I drank that hard seltzer, this episode would have been different. Maybe it would have been better. I don't know. Yeah. Probably not is my guess. All right.
I should say I am not a fan of flavored seltzer waters.
Oh, there we go.
I only like it plain.
Oh, you only like it plain?
Yeah, I can
Hot
do
take.
like a lime
take.
seltzer.
Yeah.
All right.
But if it's not plain, I'm probably not going to drink it.
Cherry lime from Aldi is maybe my top. We end up just buying tons of grapefruit, and I'll drink just about any flavored, as long as it doesn't have fake sweetener in it. If it has fake sweetener in it, that is not bubbly water. That's just an awful product.
Well, hot soda at that point.
People should not put aspartame in their body ever. This is a public service announcement.
Is that in Coke Zero? Do you know?
Yes.
I drink a lot of Coke
Well,
Zero.
Coke Zero is
It's in all diet soda.
I think Coke Zero probably has sucralose, which is different. But aspartame is like diet Coca-Cola.
Okay.
You just have to read the label.
Okay.
But aspartame it wrecks your nervous system, by the way.
Yep.
Okay.
See, you should have said. Citrus is the way I would go. I don't like all the flavors, but the citrus flavored ones are the ones I lean towards.
We'll
But
have to go
I love citrus, though.
Yeah, I mean, grapefruit, but...
We'll go to Aldi and do a little taste test.
There you
Get
go.
back to you.
The cherry lime
If we'd
bubbly
have
water.
known, we did a taste test not that
Yeah,
long ago.
we
We should
did.
have done
We
one on
did.
this one. All right, right for the pick and leave it on the tree. Mike's Hard Lemonade.
I used to like Mike's Hard Lemonade a lot more than I do now. 2-3 years ago. Yeah, definitely. I'll drink it. I'll have one. I probably wouldn't have much more than that. It's just too sweet. Yeah.
Hard pass.
I knew where you would.
It's not bougie enough for me. Come on, man. I want like a burgundy or something.
That's
what?
a completely different realm of alcohol.
They don't make Mike's Hard Liquor in France, right?
I'm sure they have some version. Well, anyway, I'm probably like along the same. I would drink one.
It's too sweet.
It is very sweet, but I would drink one, maybe for nostalgia's sake. Of course, I didn't have my first one until I was 21. But now that I'm thinking about it, it's the whole. I like lemonade. I like citrusy drinks. If I'm gonna have an alcoholic drink, here's another hot take. It's probably not gonna be a beer because the hops don't sit on my stomach well anymore.
Yeah, that's fine.
It'll be like a whiskey or like a
Whiskey's good.
like a Moscow Mule. I've become a big fan of that.
Moscow mules are good.
We even have copper cups in our house now.
Oh, man.
But yeah, if somebody put up Mike's Hard Lemonade in front of me, I'd probably
Because
drink
Moscow Mule has vodka in it, right?
Yeah, it's vodka and
Ginger beer.
and
Vodka.
ginger beer.
I mean, yeah,
and lime.
Use
good.
something that tastes good.
That's what the
The
ginger beer is for.
yeah. Delicious.
I didn't say I take shots of vodka. I said I like Moscow Mules.
Yeah. I mean, I like ginger beer, but vodka's leave it on the tree for me.
Yeah,
all
leave
right,
it on
that
the
wasn't your question though. So, all right, so I just have to ask this because you're from Seattle,
Okay.
And so ripe for the picking or leave it on the tree. Nirvana.
I'm not the biggest Nirvana fan, but
Generational.
I'd pick it.
I know, right? It's like the Bee Gees from me listening to the Bee Gees.
I think it's objectively ripe for the picking, but
Yes,
it's not
that is a good answer.
go on my playlist very
fair.
often.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just not a big fan of grunge music in general.
Huh.
Yeah, I know, surprising.
Yeah, that's like Seattle's gift to the world.
I was born
That
in
and coffee.
1998.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Kurt Cobain's still alive in 1998. I mean, not
Was he?
very, but yeah.
Okay.
Oh wait, no.
I don't think he
No,
was.
yeah.
Oh no, you're right. I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. 1994 maybe. I was in high school. I remember.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I love Nirvana. It brings me back to 7th grade and a very strange time in my life.
Angsty
Very, very
Dr. Haupt.
nostalgic. Yeah, I mean, people don't know this angry, hard edge that I carry around with me all the time. I try to hide it well, but yeah, no, it's very ripe for the picking when
You're in the right mood.
When
Yeah.
any Nirvana song comes on, I'm like, turn it up, don't turn it off. I have to kind of fight my family, but
That's the nice thing about Nirvana is that it doesn't come on very often. So you can you don't get
that
sick
is true.
of it.
That is true.
Yeah, you don't hear it on a lot of radio stations.
Yeah.
It's right for me. I think we might have talked about this on the episode. Maybe we didn't, but like on Black Widow, that openings montage, and then they have like that version of "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
Oh, that is fantastic.
Like it's like
That was a wonderful remake. I would
chills.
typically say
Yeah.
like any remake of a Nirvana song is a terrible idea, but that remake was
very good.
phenomenal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like Nirvana. I like grunge. I like to shock people. I really like rock music. I know grunge is just like a genre of rock, but rock music is great.
When I was a kid, I was really into Weird Al, and Weird Al has a spoof, a cover, whatever you'd call it, of Smells Like Teen Spirit called Smells Like Nirvana.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just making fun of how you can't understand a single word of the song. And it's great. I don't know if it's PG or not. I don't remember, but it was a fan favorite of mine when I was in middle school.
It's true. I mean, I would not, I'm not recommending our listeners of all ages to listen to Nirvana because it is not sanctified, wholesome Christian music. You gotta watch yourself as you're listening to it. I read through Kurt Cobain's journals at one point, and it's pretty sad, pretty disturbing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hard life.
Yeah. Very tough. Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for that last note. I was just messing around. All right. This one it's kind of boring, but we'll see. Right for the pick and leave it on the tree. Yeti cups.
They're leave it on the tree for me. Yeah. I understand their use and their utility, but I don't think I need one. When I was in college, I lost 2 hydro flasks, and that was like a $70 loss for me. So I'm not going to play with buying another brand name vacuum whatever thing again. I get it. They're for some people. Yeti's very popular in the Northwest. It's not for me, though.
I didn't even think about it.
I will say I have had gobs of these travel mugs given to me, right? I have a Yeti from LCEF. And it is the travel mug that will keep going. It beats out any other travel mug. If I'm going to pick a travel mug, I'm going to pick a Yeti. We were just having this debate about getting family cups with our names on them. I don't know why. Well, partly because our boys just they go through cups and leave cups everywhere.
Yep.
But I said, yeah, Yeti's not the right choice for that because you don't drink water at room temperature from a Yeti. That doesn't make any sense.
Interesting. Just put ice in it.
Yeah, but then even then, you don't use a Yeti to put ice in. You want to go with like a Tervis or something, right?
I don't know what that is.
Like the Tervis is like the clear, like double, like so the air is between the two cups.
Yeah. It's the same idea, but I've always thought of Yeti as just for hot drinks.
Interesting.
Like I've never heard that either. Interesting.
So I like Yeti cups, and when it comes to items like this, I'm of the opinion. I say items like this. I'm becoming more and more like this in life.
Like me?
You buy it nice or you buy it twice?
Exactly.
Like you're looking at something and it's like, this one's like $5 cheaper, but it's going to break. It's made of cheaper material. You won't be satisfied. You're going to end up buying the second one anyway.
I'm still working on my wife on this, but
it's the same with Dorothy. So anyway, but I'm almost the opposite. So I've to the point where if for hot drinks, I don't want metal on the inside. I want ceramic because it's non-reactive. And metal is not. So if I'm going to put a hot coffee, over time, the acid of a coffee will begin to
stain
and will also erode the inside of even stainless steel, especially if you're like me and you leave your coffee in there for too long. But I do like, if I want a drink at a temperature, I want it at that temperature. Yeah. And insulated cups, good ones, just like I can start my coffee, I can close it, I can go off, get wandered and lost on campus for a couple hours, and if I come back and my coffee's just like a couple degrees cooler, I'm a very happy guy. Yep. Same thing with cold stuff. And I don't, people are going to think I'm weird. I don't have OCD, I promise, but when condensation builds on the outside of a cup, it also irritates me. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of I said Yeti, I meant insulated cups, but
sure.
But yeah. I'd also buy a Yeti over the Amazon.
Yeah.
If someone's gonna give me one, I will gladly take it, but I'm not gonna spend my limited paycheck on it at this point. I will say this though: I saw a video on Twitter of a car that had gone through a car fire. There is a Stanley mug sitting in the console. After the fire had cleared, they went out, got the mug out. There's still ice in the Stanley.
Look at that.
So it's probably just a marketing campaign, right. But if it is, it worked. So
there you go.
You'd be surprised with it.
Yeah. My dad had a Stanley thermos.
Materials that are man-made for insulation. They do their jobs.
Who knows what they put inside those? All right, so we said this episode's probably airing right around Christmas time. So I have to ask about my all-time favorite Christmas movie. I shouldn't have said it that way because now you know what I think. But Ripe for the Pickin' or Leave It on the Tree, Christmas Story with Randy and Ralphie. Have you seen it?
I have seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know it's a generational thing, but
it's ripe for the picking for me.
okay.
It's not my favorite Christmas movie though.
Okay.
And I would say there's probably a decent amount that are more that I enjoy more, but I like Christmas movies a lot, so it's definitely ripe for the picking for me. Yeah.
So what's your favorite Christmas movie?
It's a Wonderful Life. You don't. Some people don't even consider that a Christmas movie.
Oh, it's a Christmas movie, and I would watch it if it was on. It's not Leave It on the Tree, but it's a little mid for me.
It's mid. Oh my gosh.
He's been doing this the last couple of episodes. It is. I love it, but I also don't know how I feel about it.
It's a Wonderful Life is up there. I always like watching The Polar Express.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, there's a few, but it's
National
a Wonderful
Lampoon's
Life.
Christmas Vacation.
Solid.
I quoted that in my Christmas Eve sermon
Yes.
on Vicarage, so I'm gonna have to go make sure that no one goes and watches that now.
There's a lot of quotes that you probably can't use for a sermon from that movie.
Yeah.
That's such a great movie. We just said the other day, surprised. I couldn't be more. If I woke up in the morning with my head sewn to the carpet, I wouldn't be more surprised, Eddie. Love it. Yeah, The Christmas Story for me is an absolute classic. It came out in 1989 when I was Ralphie's age, and I had a younger brother who was Randy's age. And though the movie is set in the 40s, that movie is so classic for me. I could probably rattle off a good part of most of the movie just by memory. I've been to the Christmas Story house in Cleveland. I'm like,
okay.
As they say in Southern Indiana, I am 8 up with the Christmas Story.
My mother-in-law went to the high school that's in A Christmas Story.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Warren G. Harding.
Yeah. There you go.
So it's not, and we don't play by these rules. I don't remember the last time I watched it. But like as you're talking about it, like you'll shoot your eye out. Like I can, like it is a great movie. It's right for the pig, and it is good.
You know what you should do is read the book that it's based on.
I didn't even know it was based off the book.
Yeah. We trust. In God alone we trust. All others pay cash. That is the name of the short story collection that the guy that narrates it. I think was the guy who wrote it, and it's about he was basically like kind of autobiographical, but he's a fantastic writer, and it's an agglomeration. The movie is an agglomeration of all of his short stories.
Oh wow!
Yeah, In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. 2 good book recommendations this podcast.
Man,
you're getting your money's worth today.
You are.
All right, last one for me, and just kind of inspired by Ben's questions. For the first time, I think, probably not specific to you, Dillon. It's not. But right for the pick and leave it on the tree. Starbucks Christmas blend.
I like it. Yeah, it's right for the picking. I feel like I'm doing this a lot, giving it a little bit of an exception. I'm not a big Starbucks fan. People are going to think that that's surprising because I'm from Seattle.
That's why I asked.
Yeah. Starbucks is a little bit overrated, but if I'm going to go somewhere, especially here in St. Louis, and get a coffee, I'll go to Starbucks. Right. Yeah, I'll get a Christmas blend from Starbucks. I had the Caldi's Christmas blend today after chapel. So
was it being served at after chapel coffee?
No, we went down to Caldi's.
Okay.
Right
I was
after.
like, whoa.
Stepping the game
We're
up.
stepping the game up.
No.
I'm going to have to go to after chapel coffee.
After chapel coffee is great.
It is
let's
great.
not disparage it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I was shocked by when I moved to St. Louis was the lack of drive-up coffee stands around here. There's none.
There is none.
Yeah,
Right?
in fact, there is one near Dogtown, I want to say, and I searched it out my first year here, and I went to it and I started talking to the people. The owners were from Bainbridge Island in Washington.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Yep.
I will say this though. Be careful which one you drive up to in Washington.
Yes, that's very true.
Oh yeah.
Just be careful.
I've never been to those, but
Read the sign before you drive in.
Yeah,
otherwise you will probably be surprised.
I've heard multiple people say that they were very surprised when they went to those drive-up coffee stands.
I have, to bring us back on the topic, I love Christmas blend. I don't know that I've ever had Starbucks Christmas blend coffee. I bought Trader Joe's Christmas blend the other day, and it is fantastic. It is chock full of ginger, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I like the spiciness of it. Yeah. I'm like you. If I'm gonna go to a place for coffee, I don't want to say Starbucks is like my last choice because there's almost a Starbucks in every airport, and I travel a lot. And when I get to the airport here at 5 o'clock in the morning, Starbucks is often the place I go to after TSA. But Pike's Place is okay, but I prefer Veranda.
Yeah.
For most of the year, but this time of the year, I try to lean into seasons.
Like it light.
Very typically, and the Christmas blend is not. But I like seasonal stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
We go to Costco a lot, and at various times they will have the Starbucks Christmas blend on sale, and if it's on sale, we'll absolutely grab it so we can grind it and make our own coffee. Much better than Folgers. So,
amen.
Don't buy Folgers. I'll just throw it out there. I'm not ashamed
Mom
of
and
that.
Dad, I love you, but don't buy Folgers.
Yeah.
It's not good. It is not. There's so many better options that don't break the bank as well.
Yeah.
Folgers is gross and stale. Anyway, all right, here we go. Dillon, thank you for being on. Thank you for serving the student body as president. That's not required of you. Extra step, and thank you for sharing so much of your story. It's been a true pleasure. But one thing we like to ask our guests to do before we sign off is there was somebody considering ministry and they're not quite sure. They need a little extra encouragement. What is one piece of advice you would give any listener on thinking about pursuing church work?
Sure. I don't know if there's one single, magic bullet that I can give, but pray about it. Foster a strong prayer life, and it'll be immensely beneficial. Pray about it. Talk to people about it. Don't keep it bottled up. But if there's one other piece of advice that I could give, that urge that you may have to pursue it, it's hard. If that itch doesn't get scratched, it doesn't really go away. Follow it. Visit the seminary. Reach out to someone about it. But don't keep it bottled in. Go out, pursue it. Do it. One of the best episodes for me of the Under the Fig Tree podcast was when Dr. Bierman was on here, and his advice essentially was just do it. Just do it. And I think that in my experience, that's been very beneficial too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great advice.
As a Nike man, just do it. Well, thanks again, Dillon. Thanks for coming on and being a guest. Like I said, we should try to have you on again before you depart for your first call and perhaps to the West Coast when we'll never see you again on this messing around. But of course, thank you all for tuning in and for sharing this time with us, for listening. If you're considering church work, and you don't know where to begin, reach out to us, fill out a request for information. We'll reach out to you. Come visit our campus, a lot of different opportunities. If you're in high school, Vocatio registration will be open soon. If you have high schoolers in your congregation, Vocatio registration will be open soon. Have them come and spend a week with us. It's a great time. Vocatio retreat will be in the spring, another one in the fall, and we could have you on campus for a personalized visit as well. If you're not thinking about church work, but there's somebody that you see every Sunday, you always think to yourself, man, they'd be a good church worker someday. Don't bottle it up. Make sure you tell them, because you could be that person that is that extra encouragement that they needed to have some, I don't want to say courage, but have the the extra push to begin the steps to reach out to us, contact us. It doesn't take courage to talk to us. We're nice and lovely people. We love to talk to people. Anyway, as always, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time under the fig tree. Take care.